Execution is one of the most difficult and dangerous actions that a society can take to punish crimes. This action is always accompanied by strong emotions and is a very sensitive and important issue for many people. Many people see the death penalty as a solution to fight crime, but for many others, this measure not only fails to eliminate crime, but can lead to increased violence and insecurity in society. Execution is one of the topics that is always associated with strong emotions. Emotions that can range from sadness and worry to anger and disgust. For many people, execution is a very bitter and painful experience that no one can forget. But in all these situations, execution is a bitter and unfortunate reality that will always remain for many people. For many people, the execution is a symbol of violence and insecurity that exists in society, and for many others, it is a symbol of justice and efforts to fight crime. Finally, execution is a very complex and challenging issue for which there is no simple and definitive solution. For many people, execution is a very painful and unfortunate experience that no one can forget. But for many others, the execution is a symbol of justice and an effort to fight crime. Join me and I will tell you 5 of the worst. The first one, Old Sparky's death chair. In 1897, a new method of execution was used in this city, and that was the use of the electronic chair. The prisoners who were sentenced to death saw death on this chair. The central prison of the city was the home of this electric chair. A prisoner who himself was burning in fear of this chair. This method was used until 1963. The prisoners were very afraid of this chair and no one wanted to look at it even for a moment. Years passed and this chair destroyed people. In 2001, a new execution policy was implemented in this city, and that is the use of injection. The chair of death came to rest and was moved to the warehouses of the city museum. How this electric chair works. The accused was tied to a chair and a metal cap was placed on his head. The family of the victim, along with other judicial officials, were looking at the killer from behind the glass. Most of the time, a sad atmosphere occupied the space. The accused was crying and begging for forgiveness, but no one listened to his cries. The executioner pulls a handle down and the high-pressure electric shock kills the accused. The electricity would first enter the head and burn all the cells, and the executioner's brain would be destroyed. It was a very painful death and the victim suffered a lot to die. The next case, execution using a poisonous plant. Execution using a poisonous plant has been one of the old and very dangerous ways to execute people. In this method, plants that have toxic compounds are used to cause quick and painful death in people. This method was used in the past in some countries as a way to execute criminals, but now it is banned in many countries because of the dangers that come with it. One of the poisonous plants used in this method is Atropa belladonna. This plant contains compounds known as tropanes, which can be highly toxic. Tropans stimulate the central nervous system and cause seizures, hypotension, shortness of breath and eventually death. Its roots and leaves are used for execution using the blotter plant. This plant grows in many parts of the world and is easily accessible. Another method used for execution using a poisonous plant is the use of the hemlock plant. This plant contains compounds known as alkaloids, which can be highly toxic. Alkaloids stimulate the central nervous system and cause convulsions, low blood pressure, shortness of breath and eventually death. For execution using the hemlock plant, its leaves and stems are used. This plant grows in many parts of the world and is easily accessible. The third case, execution using poisonous gas, is one of the execution methods in which poisonous gases such as potassium cyanide, carbon monoxide and other gases are used to cause quick death in the convicts. This method of execution is used in many countries because of its simplicity and low cost. In this method, the condemned to death is placed in a small room and poisonous gas is injected into the room. The poisonous gas enters his lungs by the inmate's breath, causing blockage of the airways and cardiac dysfunction, which ultimately leads to the inmate's death. The use of poisonous gas is used in many countries due to its simplicity and low cost, but this method of execution is also associated with problems. One of the problems of this execution method is that the person sentenced to death may suffer more during the implementation of this method due to his inability to tolerate the poisonous gas. Also, this method of execution may cause pain and suffering to the condemned. The fourth case, execution by fire extinguisher, has been one of the old and very brutal methods of executing people. In this method, the executed person is tied to a column or wall and then a fire extinguisher is placed on his head and body. This method causes the person to be executed to experience severe pain and eventually die due to severe burns. The use of this execution method has been very common in the past and was used as one of the public execution methods in many countries. However, this method is banned in many countries due to its brutality and inappropriateness, and other methods of execution are used instead. The fifth case is execution by whipping. Considering that execution by whipping is one of the old and very harsh methods of execution, its explanation may not go without saying for some people. In this method, the condemned person is severely beaten with a whip called death whips until he dies. These whips are usually made of several types of bare hardwood and are divided into bundles of about 10 to 20 lashes. This method of execution was used in some countries in the past, but now it is banned in many countries due to high violence and severe pain caused to the convicts. Also, due to the impossibility of adjusting the intensity of the blows and the possibility of errors in the number of blows. This method of execution has caused it to be recognized as an inhumane and unacceptable method in many countries.